With the westernization of Native American culture, the art of making totem poles went through a phase of great endangerment. People in the mid-30s and early 40s found this to be a problem and started a movement with the Civilian Conservation Corps. The Civilian Conservation Corps was a program started by President FDR in 1933 to protect against natural resource depletion and enforce the betterment of America's young men.
One of the interesting things is in the 1940s, when those poles were recarved, there weren't the native people, the Tlingits and the Haida, hadn't been continuing their cultural, particularly their arts, from one generation to the others because they had become very, very westernized. So in effect, the whole program with the Civilian Conservation Corps gave them an opportunity for young people to learn from old master carvers a craft that it was kind of maybe not dying out, but was slowing down. And so
The students interviewed for this documentary were not informed of the interview questions before, and these are their live answers as I recorded them as they said them.
A totem pole is a large, typically wooden, statuesque thing that represents some sort of culture with like different layers, like heads and symbols and stuff.
Totem pole. That's one of the Native American poles or something.
It's a structure that usually Native Americans and Inuit tribes make to symbolize power and culture, but there are different ways to think of what a totem pole truly is.
A totem pole is basically a log of a tree that Native Americans use to they carve that represent their tribes in different ways.
Significance of them is that they tell ancient stories, maybe, because I know there's animals, and they're Native Americans are very fond of the animals.
To represent their history along those lines and maintain traditional views on honoring people.
It symbolizes their worship of nature, because a lot of times when you see totem poles, a lot of the art on them represent animals and natural phenomenons.
The significance is that it represents basically everyone in the tribe that keeps their culture, that shows their culture in many different ways, and how it's represented and what it means to them.
I would consider it an art. Would I consider it a dying art? Not particularly, because as far as my knowledge goes, it's still very prominent amongst Native American culture, and I don't think it's quite a dying art just yet.
I would consider it probably a dying art, just because there's starting to be less and less Native Americans, just because they're not wanting to stick with that culture. They're wanting to starting to go out and go into the real world and to have real jobs and everything, and not really stick around. The only place you really see Native American art is in the local areas of Indian reserves and everything.
totem pole carving is still alive and well here in Sitka and Southeast Alaska and other places all over the world. But like any other art, it has developed and it has evolved so that it stays relevant to the people who make the art and the people who appreciate it and look at it. And a woman wanted to use the traditional art of carving and the traditional idea of totem poles to help the Native community here in Sitka deal with some of the social issues. So in the course of carving the pole, they had people gather together to talk about things like chemical and substance abuse, addiction, domestic violence, and some of the other issues that the people face. And it's a